We're going to go live at this post game. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. This was a really, really bad night of football. If you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan, which if you're here, then you probably are. If you're not an Oklahoma Sooners fan and you're here, thanks for stopping by and enjoy our tears, because the Oklahoma Sooners fall 41-34 to the Kansas State Wildcats on Saturday night. And I mean, what can we say? I mean, Adrian Martinez was basically Tim Tebow. He ran for more than 140 yards, had 4 touchdowns. He threw for 243 and another touchdown. I mean, he was a player that we hadn't seen in 2022 at all. And I guess the pep talk that he got from his coaching staff really changed the game. And just to introduce myself, I'm John Williams. He's Josh Helmer. We're the hosts here on Locked On Sooners. So Josh, man, what do you initially just kind of take away from this thing?
Oh, I think, for me, after a week of kind of pumping this matchup up as how can Oklahoma allow Kansas State to throw the football, the amount that Kansas State needs to throw the football to win this game over Oklahoma, when the final statistics don't really even necessarily show that Kansas State at times necessarily needed to do that. It's hard for me to separate myself from the idea that Oklahoma let me down a little bit in this game. If I'm a Sooner fan, Oklahoma let me down. If I'm a Kansas State fan, man, the difference from 1 week versus Tulane versus coming down to Oklahoma in terms of the execution, it was night and day. You really do have to, tip your cap to what Adrian Martinez did in this game, both running and throwing the football, what Deuce Vaughn did in this game, John, running the football, I thought was at times, especially early, difficult for Oklahoma to defend. So, coming off of where we thought this matchup was going in to where obviously where it wound up with Kansas State pulling off the upset in Norman, I thought obviously it was a big flop on the face for OU. And for Kansas State, for Chris Kleiman, for the Wildcats, for Adrian Martinez, for everybody involved, whatever they did from whatever was, what was going on, a week plus ago versus now, man, the preparation standpoint, they got it figured out and they got Oklahoma solved. And OU did not tackle well. And ultimately, because of how poor Oklahoma was defensively, John, they lost this football game. So, I mean, it's a frustrating night for Sooner fans.
It is. And there's a lot of things that went wrong in this game. I don't think you can point to one particular area. The glaring one is defensively. I mean, you gave up 41 points to a team that was coming into this game, averaging just over 20 points a game. They just got held to 10 points by Tulane. And it was just a night and day performance from Adrian Martinez, but yet there wasn't as much consistent fight from the team. I felt like, they were giving good effort, but it seemed like that they were being dictated to and not dictating the pace of play defensively. I mean, very little pass rush. I mean, there were some occasions where they were getting into the backfield in the run game, but generally they were getting blown off the ball. The defensive line was. The linebacker group did not tackle very well. The secondary, I felt like, just kind of went to sleep at times, letting guys just run wide open. And so that's kind of the biggest issue is from what we saw against Nebraska, which we thought was a better passing offense than what Kansas State was going to have. Oklahoma's defense was just in shambles, I felt like, for most of the night. They had a good stretch there in the second quarter, and then another kind of decent stretch in the third where they were actually getting off the field. They're forcing Kansas State into some long down and distances, but either they would just lose track of Adrian Martinez in the running game on just a scramble and he'd pick up a first down, or they'd lose track of a wide receiver just out in the zone and they'd end up wide open. There were just so many things that I felt like that just weren't tight enough defensively for this team to be able to get stops and get off the field consistently.
I'm looking, again, just at the final box score, John. And man, it's problematic when you look at the final box score and Adrian Martinez has 21 rushes, right? For a gain of 148 and a net of 148 with 4 touchdowns. And Deuce Vaughn, right? Rushes 25 times for a $123 for a loss of 7, finishes with 116 in the net rushing department. So I guess what that tells me is that Oklahoma just did not get these guys down at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage for the majority of this football game, which we kind of knew coming in, right? The script for success for Oklahoma defensively was, guess what Kansas State is going to do against Oklahoma, offensively to defensively. They're going to try and mix in the quarterback run game. They're going to give it to Deuce Vaughn a lot. And Kansas State did that. And Oklahoma was just simply not, top to bottom from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, John, very successful in stopping that. I mean, Adrian Martinez finishes with 4 rushing touchdowns. I mean, that is, again, not what you dialed up, right?
No, not at all. And I think we knew that he was going to run the ball. Like, that was not a surprise. The surprise was just how aggressive they were throwing the football. They came out early in the game and were getting down the field with it. And maybe it surprised the defense too, because this tight end, Bennett, I think was his last name, or Bitten, something like that. He had a big catch early in the game, just wide open in the middle of the field. And they just didn't really seem to have much. Sinnott, sorry. Bennett, Sinnott. There were several times that was the case where they're just wide open guys in the middle of the field, not, down the sideline, not in the scramble drill. I mean, the scramble drill stuff, that kind of happens. But when the guy's dropped back and he's only had the ball for 2.5 seconds and then he throws the football and there's somebody wide open, like, okay, there was a mental breakdown somewhere along the line. And you're not getting any pass rush at all. And so I just don't know where to go with this defense after what was just kind of a poor performance all the way around. I mean, I have a hard time looking at anything from the defensive side of the football that was productive tonight.
Yeah, I've got the full, statistics in front of me. 28 first downs in Kansas State for this game. 15 via the rushing variety, 10 through the air, 3 versus penalty. It felt like, more than 3 came via penalty for Kansas State in this game. I mean, that's honestly probably a little bit more haunting for Oklahoma, that 25 of those 28 came via the non-penalty, right? That came 15 versus the rushing and 10 through the air. Oklahoma was just, as you said, John, not good defensively in this game. And, for Oklahoma fans that sat there and thought, okay, we've seen better tackling, right? Going through the Nebraska game, we've seen, better snap-to-snap approach from Oklahoma up to this Kansas State game. All of those things that were positive for OU, it wasn't that versus Kansas State. And we knew that Deuce Vaughn was going to be a problem, right? We knew that was going to be a tough guy to defend in this football game. And you end it, and Deuce Vaughn finishes with 25 rushes for 116, 4.6 average, which doesn't sound like much, I guess, from the 4.6 per carry average, but it just felt like what he did catching and running the football, it wasn't successful enough, right? From Oklahoma defensively, the way that obviously you were keyed into what Deuce Vaughn was doing. Deuce Vaughn kind of did with Adrian Martinez what Deuce Vaughn wanted to do. And that part of it, obviously leaving this game, exiting it, is disappointing for Oklahoma.
Well, he came into this game averaging something like 3.6 yards per carry against Oklahoma in the previous 2 matchups. So they had done a pretty decent job. And early in the game, I felt like they were doing okay. They were limiting his big plays, but it seemed like as the game wore on, and the defense was on the field quite a bit, as the game wore on, he was able to get more and more chunk plays, and the unit just wasn't able to bring him down on first contact. Another issue I felt like that stood out, and I think Roy Williams, legendary safety from Oklahoma, mentioned this on Twitter too, is just a lot of the grabbing the football as opposed to trying to actually tackle the guy. And he mentioned, he said, the first guy, he wraps up. The second guy is the one that's supposed to come in and try and take the ball away. Way too many times somebody was trying to grab the football as opposed to just tackle the guy, and they ended up getting 3 or 4 more yards. It was just a very noticeable thing that happened. As we're talking about the defense, I want to talk about the last big Adrian Martinez run, because if you were kind of paying attention throughout the game, anytime that they went empty backfield with Adrian Martinez, it was going to be a quarterback run, whether it was and generally it was a draw play. Well, it's 3rd and 16 and they go empty. Oklahoma's got a chance to get the ball back and potentially go down and tie this game. They run a little stunt, rush 4. Again, no pressure on the quarterback. He takes his time in the backfield, waits for his blockers to get downfield. I say blockers because none of those receivers were actually running routes. They were just getting down the field so that they could create space and then block once Adrian Martinez became a runner. Very poor awareness from the defense on that. There's zero chance that they're going to let Adrian Martinez throw for it on 3rd and 16. I'm sorry. I know he'd been better and he'd played well, but I don't think there's any chance that they're throwing it on that play.
You give up that first down. I'm with you, man. That was such a what are we doing type of play from Oklahoma that you just leave the football game and Adrian Martinez tucks it and runs it. And it's like, okay, man, you got Brent Venables, who is now the new head coach, and up and down just the defensive coaching roster, if you will, for Oklahoma. And you fail on that play, that type of 3rd and long where you're trying to get the football back. It was debilitating what happened to Oklahoma on that particular 3rd down and long that you're talking about, to where it does make you wonder, okay, what does the future have in store for Oklahoma now and into the future? I don't want to super hyper react to this thing, but this is now the first bill of adversity that has been truly sent to this Oklahoma coaching staff, right? To Brent Venables and everybody on staff. That play that you're talking about, John, I don't know how. I don't know a positive way to spin it. How do you give up that 3rd down and 15, 16 that you gave up in that moment? The only thing that can happen on that play is, 14, 12, 13, whatever yards it is. You can't give up a first down on that play, and Oklahoma did, and ultimately that was the play in the football game that totally doomed Oklahoma, right? It took away any opportunity to drive down the field to try and tie the football game up, forced it into overtime, whatever could happen after that. So, for an Oklahoma team that has so many positive things going for it going into this game, John, that was pretty alarming that in that 3rd down and long situation, you couldn't get the football back.
Yeah, everything kind of worked in their favor. They got the stop on 1st down. I believe another stop on 2nd, or the penalty happened, and then it was like 2nd and 17. And then you got the stop on 2nd and 17 where it was just now 3rd and 16. And I think once they ran it with Deuce Vaughn, you had to know another run was coming, because if you're running on 2nd and 16, you're basically playing to punt or just hope that you can break a big one, which they ultimately did. And so that's going to be one of those things. I mean, they talked about it on the broadcast as coaching, teaching tape. That's going to be one of those situations because everybody, nobody I think was thinking run. They were all thinking pass, and nobody was ready for him to just keep it and run that draw play, which is really disappointing because it just shows bad situational awareness. And I love a lot of these guys on this defense, and I think they're still kind of learning themselves and growing. I mean, Billy Bowman's just been starting a few games. Danny Stutzman's starting a few games. But I think the veterans on this team were probably some of the more disappointing players. Your David Agwebu's, your Deshaun Whites. Woody Washington, I felt like didn't necessarily have the best game, of his career either. It just top to bottom defensively, it just was very upsetting. And I won't say upsetting. It was just unfortunate. It's like when you have an opportunity to get a key critical stop to give the ball back to your offense with a chance to go down and score, and then you let a play like that happen. It was ball game after that. Yeah, there a few more things transpired, and Oklahoma had a chance to recover an onside kick. But once Adrian Martinez picked up the first down, it was ball game.
No, that's right. Yeah, the game was over, right? I mean, that was the play. And the frustrating thing about it for Oklahoma is you had a number of guys on that third down and what was it, 15, 16, whatever. I mean, it was the third down and 15 plus that it looked like they didn't understand the time and situation on that play. It's like, guys, man, do not let Adrian Martinez get to the sticks. And sure enough, they did. But it was just, you know what, man, that kind of night, John, for Oklahoma. It's like it was almost if you're a Wildcat fan, that's exactly how the night was going to end, right? Adrian Martinez somehow picks up that third down and long. And if you're an Oklahoma fan, it's like, yeah, of course, Adrian Martinez somehow picks up that third down and long. It's frustrating. It does boil over into this next week. Some questions that I think linger for us about, how much progress has Oklahoma made defensively? Because from the onset of this football game to even just that singular play, John, I think there's some serious questions that have to be asked about Oklahoma's defense. And it stinks because you come out of that Nebraska performance and you felt so good about what Oklahoma was doing defensively. And then you come out of this Kansas State performance and really start to finish. I know there were stops. There were stops mixed in. I don't want to sit here and act like the defense was just absolutely terrible. But look, it kind of felt pretty leaky, did it not, defensively for Oklahoma coming out of tonight? So it feels like Brent Venables was, kind of poorly, John, gift wrapped. Here you go. Here's Oklahoma. It's like, surprise. If you thought this Oklahoma defense was good, here's what Oklahoma defense looks like. And it kind of looked like that tonight. And unfortunately, when push came to shove, Oklahoma couldn't come up with the stop that they needed, John.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that goes into probably our next discussion, which needs to be about the offense, because I felt like they sleptwalked through a lot of this game. It was not good from Jeff Lebby to Dylan Gabriel. Can we get rid of the behind the line of scrimmage throw to the streaking running back or wide receiver? Because it's not doing anything. It's just getting you behind the schedule with a 2nd and 11. And rarely are you picking up positive yardage on that. There was so much of this game where I felt like the offensive play calling was just disjointed. They weren't doing what they needed to do to keep the ball moving, keep everything going. And I see we got a lot of people that are responding, still talking about the defense. So we can talk more about that as well. So let's do that first. We got people that are talking about, Oklahoma fans or Sooner fans need to be humbled a little bit. Guilty as charged right here. I was talking all week about how I felt like this team was one of the better teams in the conference, in the country. They were a much better team than Kansas State was. And here we are. We got our humbling. This one's.
Can I sound off on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your fave shed. Hey, I hear you. Sooner fans needed to be humbled. I agree. Obviously, they did, right? I mean, the final score in this football game tells you that Oklahoma needed to be humbled. I don't blame myself or you, John, or Oklahoma fans for feeling the way that they felt coming out of the Nebraska game, coming out of the first couple of games. This was such a wild step back, for Oklahoma in that regard. It's so frustrating as somebody that has covered this team or is an Oklahoma fan. It feels like, 4 or 5 steps forward. And then tonight was the 3, 4, 5, however many steps back you want to take for Oklahoma. Nebraska was a legitimate step forward for this football program, I guess is what I'm getting at. And then to flip that around and combine it with this Kansas State game at home, I don't blame Oklahoma fans for getting a little bit caught up right? That Brent Venables had this team playing football differently than this Oklahoma team had played it. I got caught up a little bit too much in that regard. And then, obviously this game brings you, back down to earth. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't blame fans, John, for feeling the way they felt against Nebraska, though I agree with what the individual says right here. This was a nice, let's come back down to earth, Oklahoma.
Yeah, and BMG Baby kind of mentioned what you mentioned, is that it looked similar to last year's defense. I mean, this is kind of what we saw during the Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch era at times. That was kind of the part that surprised me the most, was how little pressure we were getting on Adrian Martinez. I mean, the guy seemed to have as much time as he wanted to have behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, behind his offensive line, which they're good. They're a good unit, but I did not expect them to kind of be able to handle all of Oklahoma's defense. I felt like the one guy that was getting any kind of consistent pressure was maybe Jalen Redmond out of this game. I mean, he was getting into the backfield several times, got a couple quarterback hits maybe, but everybody else, I felt like it was just, there was just no pass rush tonight.
Well, and, for a team that I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was trying to dig it up while you were rambling along right there. I know that Oklahoma was one of the top TFL teams nationally going into this game. And, looking at the final box score, looks like Oklahoma wasn't good enough in that category in this game. What, 4 TFLs, right? And they'd been averaging 9. So that's, I don't want to sit here and live in the universe that 4 TFLs is quote unquote bad, right? You can win a football game with 4 TFLs and 0 sacks, but Oklahoma was kind of existing in the universe to where they had 9 TFLs and multiple sacks. And obviously tonight that was not the case versus Kansas State. And ultimately that was part of the problem for Oklahoma, is that they got matched up in against the team in Kansas State that blocked things better than anybody had blocked things up against Oklahoma in the past so far this season through 3 games. And OU just, for whatever reason, whether it was Reggie Grimes or Ethan Downs or whoever, they just could not get consistent pressure in this game to force mistakes and to force, whether it was even just like a little handoff to Deuce Vaughn, John, or like little underneath pass to Deuce Vaughn. It's like every little bit and piece that Kansas State wanted to run in this game, Oklahoma didn't get to disrupt it a lot in this game. I mean, it was very rare that Oklahoma was disruptive in this game, and that was a big part of why they lost.
And we talked about it a little bit earlier, that they just weren't able to get off much blocks. John Graham mentions that as well. And I think that was kind of the big issue with the defensive front is, they're not getting off blocks. And when also they were running 3-man lines, which they were for a lot of this game, well, that meant a lot of times 1 or 2 offensive linemen were getting to the second level and getting to your linebackers, which is part of the problem that I had with, and I don't know who I am to question Brent Venables and Ted Roof and their defensive game plan, but a team wants to run the football. You got a guy like Deuce Vaughn, you got a big physical quarterback like Adrian Martinez. Maybe let's load up a little bit more with some heavy personnel and play 4-man lines as opposed to the 3-man lines. I felt like the problem they were having last week against Nebraska was a lot usually due to the 3-man line. They go to a 4-man front, things got a little bit better at times. So that was a little odd to me that they would go that route. Maybe they were concerned about Deuce Vaughn, the pass catcher, and not as much the runner, which he only caught 2 passes tonight. So maybe, you kind of played into Kansas State's hands a little bit on that front. I don't know, but yeah, getting off blocks was a big issue. Totally agree with you, John. It was just unfortunate that nothing seemed to coalesce tonight defensively.
Can I just say publicly how much I hate losing to Kansas State? I mean, I know that this is not, specifically about anything going on the football field, but man, how is it that this Kansas State football program, coming off a loss to Tulane, comes into Norman and wins a football game. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you tell me, John. I get that they don't really connect and it doesn't really matter, but if I'm an OU fan, I'm pissed off tonight. Are you kidding me? How does Kansas State come down here and with this lousy-ass football team win again, right? With this lousy-ass passing offense, win again. And I say lousy-ass. It's not a lousy football team from Manhattan, Kansas. I'm just trying to vocalize some of the frustration as an Oklahoma fan. Because guess what? Yeah, OU's more talented than Kansas State. It shouldn't keep playing out this way, but why does it for Kansas State? You would have thought minus Lincoln Riley and minus some of the guys that were around here that, boom, that would be zip, adios, sayonara. And yet, Brent Venables kind of looks like Bob Stoops at times late in his tenure where, for whatever reason, Kansas State, we're going to do it by the book, finds a way to walk into Norman and get a win. It's so frustrating. It has to be if you're an Oklahoma fan.
Yeah, it definitely has to be. Kansas State's now 4-2 in your building since 2012. Like, that's unreal to me. Like, they were 3-2 coming into this one, and then they picked up another win. I don't know what to think about that because they've had several different coaches during those 10 years, several different quarterbacks. I mean, obviously the teams change, and yet they still come in with this belief that they can beat you in your building. And I mean, come in, here in 2 years. Well, if Oklahoma's still in the Big 12 in 2 years and Kansas State gets ready to come, I'll take that a little bit more seriously because it seems to be that the Wildcats, they've got your number in your building because they won the last two matchups. So I don't know. It's just a weird dilemma. It's a weird kind of just circumstance that surrounds this game. But, based on what we were hearing from the broadcast, our good friend of the show, Macy Turley, who was at the game, our softball analyst, national champion from 2000, she was at the game and said the crowd was loud. So, if you were at the game and you felt like it was a little bit different, let us know. But it seemed like the crowd was into it. Even though Kansas State got up early in this matchup, it seemed like the crowd kind of ebbed and flowed a little bit. I mean, they got quiet pretty quick, but then as Oklahoma made some things happen, they started getting back into it a little bit more. I don't know, man. I don't know what to think about Oklahoma and this, home field advantage or not, and this issue with Kansas State coming to Norman.
Yeah, what I think is home field don't matter, and that's disappointing. Home field should matter, but historically, for whatever reason in this game, it does not matter. It does not matter. Kansas State wins this game or plays close against Oklahoma. So I don't know, man. You can't fall behind in mini games 14-0 and expect to just go out and, rally back and go win the game. And again, we saw tonight that ultimately, John, that was the Achilles heel for Oklahoma. I mean, we can sit there and nosedive and, double inspect anything that happened tonight. But ultimately, really, when you break this thing down, don't fall behind 14-0 in this football game at home versus Kansas State. I mean, the whole week we can talk about all these different problems that Kansas State has offensively and all these positive things that Oklahoma's got going on. Don't fall behind by 2 scores early in the game. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Don't do that. K-State, as many negative things as I said about them throwing the football this week, guess what? Chances are K-State with somebody like Deuce Vaughn, who, by the way, is maybe the most talented per points guy. One guy, right? One player per points. What this one player accounts for, that's Deuce Vaughn, right? He might be worth the most for one guy. Don't spot them 14 points. Okay, end rant.
No, I think it's a worthwhile conversation because, I mean, Oklahoma's offense came out sluggish again. The last week it was one drive. This week it was most of the first quarter, I think, but it just kind of all played into this whole thing where none of it was really flowing well. Like they didn't have the right feel to it from the get-go. You know, Kansas State opens with a 12-play, 75-yard touchdown drive. Very few big plays. They just methodically just work themselves down the field, and it ends with a 6-yard touchdown run. And I think that, to me, I was like, okay, I'm a bit nervous now. Like the way that they so easily moved down the field and were picking up some third downs and making Oklahoma look like they didn't even belong on the field at times. I was like, okay. And then when they got up 14-0, the next one was an 8-play or 7-play, 80-yard touchdown drive. My face went flush. Like I was already like super nervous, knew that this wasn't not going to go well for the Oklahoma Sooners. We got more people talking about the defense. Joe C, hopefully this is not Joe Castiglione, had to say, you know, David Agwebu. I mean, he had a rough one several times. I mean, Adrian Martinez, he's got enough speed, but he's not like a fast guy. He does not run super fast. He's not Kyler Murray. He's not even like, I don't know. But yeah, some of the angles that these guys were taking to get to Adrian Martinez, David Agwebu included, but I mean, Deshaun White's in that conversation as well. Man, it was bad. It was just rough.
John, this felt so Skylar Thompson-y. I mean, it's so frustrating. Like Skylar Thompson is a really solid quarterback, right? And I hope that K-State fans take this the right way, because I know there's going to be a lot of them that find their way to this YouTube page, right? They see these clicks. And congratulations to you. If I haven't said it yet, congratulations to you. You schemed it up, man, and you went and you earned it. And we can sit here and we can whine and we can bitch and we can moan. And the bottom line is K-State deserved this dub. Like many of these other games in Norman, Oklahoma, K-State went out and earned it. That being said, dude, I mean, the accuracy of these K-State quarterbacks coming in, not great. And yet they find a way to play so good in this football game. And that is a failure on Oklahoma's behalf to not get into the backfield and, number one, stop the run, and number two, affect the quarterback. Too many times in this game, they've let Skylar Thompson, and in this case, obviously Adrian Martinez, become something that they're not, John, to where it's like you leave the football game and you ask yourself, how did we come into this game with everything that we knew to be a reality being a reality, and we exit the game in everything we thought was a reality? It's, I don't know. It's some kind of a horror movie that is fake.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just watching it unfold throughout the game. I just kept getting this sinking. My wife went to the game. Like she got up super early this morning. We live out in Eastern Oklahoma and left at like 7:30 this morning to go meet a friend in Oklahoma City and then go to the pregame festivities at 3:00 and be there for the Walk of Champions. And some really cool stuff. She was sending me some video that was really cool. And I'm sitting there and we're texting back and forth through the game. I'm like, I'm really sorry that the first time that you've gone to a game in a while, because she's an OU alum, is this game, because you just get that sinking feeling. It never really goes away, even when you're tied, even when you're within a score, because you just don't trust that Oklahoma is going to be able to get off the field, and you don't trust the offense to consistently move the ball. Even when they came out flowing, with Eric Gray in the running game in the second half, it seemed like things were going good. And then you get across the 50-yard line and you have some dumb penalty, false start. It seemed like everybody wanted to have a false start tonight. It was the Oprah Winfrey show handing out false starts. You get a false start, and you get a false start, and you get a false start. And that just killed drives every single time. It just killed drives. And I don't understand how that's possible. You get such great momentum. I mean, really, it's just a lack of focus on the offense, on the offensive line in particular, or lack of communication. And then you have the substitution, not the substitute, the delay of game when they needed to, or were wanting to make a substitution on the 4th and 5 throw to Drake Stoops. I mean, that issue started, or that maybe that was the next series. I can't remember. It gets all jumbled up. But you were going to go for it, and then you had to delay a game, and pushed it back. And maybe they still went anyway. And they got the play that they wanted, but no, it was two separate plays. Now I'm remembering it. But the delay of game penalty, yeah, man, it's been a long one. The delay of game penalty kind of puts you in a situation where you have to now punt it. But then you get the play you want. We're going to talk about Dylan Gabriel for a little bit. You get the play you want with Drake Stoops, and he's wide open. Really, all he needs to do is turn around. He didn't even have to run the whole route. If he just turns around, he sits down in the zone. That should be an easy dunk. But even running his full route, like that should have been an easy pitch and catch for a first down. They've worked on that one probably 100 times in practice. I mean, there was nobody around him. And whether Dylan Gabriel had pressure in his face or not, like that's a throw that everybody should make. He wasn't rushed. It didn't seem like there was a lot of pressure on the play. It was a quick snap or a quick throw. I don't know what happened there, but that was kind of like that play was a bit of the microcosm of what we've seen from Dylan Gabriel at times, where we get some really, really good highs, like really high highs, and then some really low lows like that one. And then the missed slogo to Drake Stoops as well, where he just like rocketed it over him as opposed to like putting some air under it. Like they talked about on the broadcast, like he didn't give him any opportunity to run under the football. And I like what I've seen from Dylan Gabriel at times this season. And I was on with your guy, Parker Thune, over there at the ref, during the day. And he asked me how I would grade Dylan Gabriel's performance. And I said, I put him at a B+. He's been really good at times, hasn't been great. Every quarterback misses throws, but he's missed some pretty egregious ones that have taken points off the board. He did that last week with Nebraska. He did it again this week. And we got, several of the people that are watching this, they're commenting on Dylan Gabriel's inaccuracy. And I think it's something to continue to monitor. It's something to watch, and might be just a reality of what we're going to deal with this season. Again, good quarterback. He's been really good through the first 3-4 games. He had some good moments tonight. I mean, that ball to Marvin Mims was fantastic, but when they needed him to make a big throw in a clutch moment, he fell short.
You want to rifle through some final fan thoughts and then call it a night? I mean, obviously, appreciate all of you guys. This is not the night that Oklahoma fans were hoping that it would be. K-State fans, OU haters out there that are watching along, congratulations to you. I know that this is sustaining you to watch this broadcast knowing that Oklahoma fell short. But you want to hit a couple of final Oklahoma thoughts, and then we'll call it a night and welcome everybody to follow along with Locked On Sooners the rest of the week. What do you say, huh?
Yeah. Jenny Sue, she says it's a really disappointing tonight, and I agree. That's kind of the overarching theme from what I came away with.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions, John, we can go with that. The rest of the week, like why it's disappointing, which pieces of the puzzle, both sides of the football, it's disappointing, and again, why? But for OU, this is, I want to say this before we sign off. I'm not going to get super carried away, and I hope that Oklahoma fans don't get wildly carried away, because ultimately, John, this is kind of where OU's been, right? Under Lincoln Riley. This is kind of where OU's been, even dating back before Lincoln Riley into the final moments of the Bob Stoops era. This is kind of where OU's been. They don't go undefeated. They don't beat every team that they're supposed to beat. And yet, let's find out, kind of what the rest of this season is going to entail, because this is a disappointing loss. I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that Oklahoma, by any stretch of the imagination, I don't want to let them off the hook. They should have won tonight, John. They didn't. They didn't play well enough to win tonight, John. And yet, this is kind of who OU's been, right? If OU loses one game this regular season, and this is the one game they lose, okay, well, status quo. Okay, moving on. Next response.
So that brings us to Troglodyte. He throw this one out there kind of early, trying to throw a little bit of sunshine out there, like maybe a New Year's Six bowl. Is that still an okay or reasonable expectation even for this team? And we can get into that later in the week too. Just like what should we expect from this team the rest of the season?
Well, what do you think? I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. I would say, based on what I saw tonight, I mean, but who's going to a New Year's Six ball? You know what I mean? Like, who's going? I would say no. I don't think OU's going to a New Year's Six ball based on tonight. But then again, OU's 3-1. You know, I mean, they might win out. But for me to sit here and act like OU's going to do that, I think is very homeristic. I don't think OU's going to do that. I don't think the Big 12's all that good. But for me to sit here and act like I think OU's going to only lose one game the rest of the way or none the rest of the way, I don't feel that way right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of people in the comment sections that are feeling that way too. BMG baby, he's throwing out 9-3. Hey, what's up, Matthew? Ema to you, I guess. We gotta do it now since you beat us in our stadium. We gotta say that. And then Joe C saying 8-4. He's already claiming Baylor, Iowa State, and UT as losses. I mean, Kansas. Like, I don't feel great about Kansas. Like, Jalen Daniels is putting on a clinic right now every single week, and you just showed that you have a really hard time with running quarterbacks. He's been one of the best in the country so far. James Bailey, no way. This team is not good. We get Brandon Gallegos. This team's going to bounce back for sure. Go Sooners. I hope so. I would like to think that they will. We'll see next week against
Brandon.
TCU.
Thank you for some positivity.
That's right. Next week against TCU will be another test. Max Duggan, he likes to run the football. We thought we could play him well. We'll see. Quentin Johnston's a big test for the defensive back group. Jimmy Satterfield, Jimmy's been with us for most of this show, so thanks for tuning in. But he's thinking 8-4 or 8-5. Yeah, I mean that I can understand. What's that?
I've got a hot take for you.
Go for
it. Maybe I said this earlier tonight, but if I didn't very clearly, I'll share it right now. I don't think there's a big difference. Until I see otherwise, I don't think there's a big difference between Oklahoma 2021 and Oklahoma 2022 and Oklahoma 2020 and Oklahoma 2022 or 19 in 2022 or 18. I've had a long-standing belief Oklahoma fans have this mirage in their minds that 17 Oklahoma was like real close to winning a national championship. Oklahoma was not that close to winning a national championship at 17. They had a really good quarterback in Baker Mayfield who won a Heisman, and they put up a lot of points, and they had a nice first half against Georgia in that game. But guess what happened in that second half versus Georgia? They couldn't stop nobody, and they lost the football game. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't know if 20 to 21 to 22 right now, there's a big difference between where OU's been and where OU is right now. And ultimately, if you're an Oklahoma fan and you're thinking about tonight and you're thinking about, okay, what does the rest of this season have in store? Or what does the rest of, John, next season have in store? Or the year after that? Oklahoma's recruiting better than it's ever recruited in the past 8, 5, 10, toss in a number, years. In recent memory, Oklahoma's recruiting better than it's ever recruited. I'm not super carried away in the negativity of tonight. I'm super disappointed. I don't want it to get twisted before we sign off tonight. This was a frustrating loss for Oklahoma, but I guess what I'm saying is I think Oklahoma fans have to take tonight in perspective. This was probably coming somewhere, and I hate to say that, dang it, because I thought that maybe Brent Venables was going to have this thing be different in year one, and I will stay tuned because I'll be the first guy, John, that 2 weeks from now, next week, if Oklahoma follows this up with a loss at TCU and another loss in the Cotton Bowl versus Texas, I'll be the first guy to say the sky is falling down on Oklahoma, okay? So I don't get me twisted as some sort of sunshine pumper here. I'm just saying that if you thought this OU team was going undefeated, this OU team ain't that good, okay? And tonight was a clear indication of that. And so let's see what they do going forward. Can they match what Lincoln Riley's teams did? I know we'd like to dump all over Lincoln Riley, right? Can they do what the only Lincoln Riley team in his final year didn't do, which is go win the Big 12, right? Can they rebound and go do that? That's a serious question for this OU team. I don't know if the answer is yes or no, John.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of follow up that a little bit too with Adrian Martinez played out of his mind tonight. Like, he even played better than the guy we saw last year who was with Nebraska. Like, this was one of these epic kind of performances that sometimes just happens. Like, he played a great game, and you have to tip your cap to him. Oklahoma's defense didn't defend him well, but also he took advantage of what was happening on the field, and he played a great game. Like, he made good throws, big time throws, clutch at times, and those runs were absolutely clutch. Like, every single time that they needed to pick up a third and 5 or less, or a 4th and short or something like that, they were money going to Adrian Martinez. Like, he was the best player on the field tonight. And coming into this game, if you're a subscriber to Locked On Sooners and you've been listening to the show for much of the last few months, you know I was not a big believer in Adrian Martinez. The things that he did really well, though, he avoided the turnover plays. There was the one throw to Billy Bowman almost intercepted that Malik Knowles ended up playing defensive back on, and it fell incomplete. That was the one play that I can remember that was like a turnover-worthy type of play. And that's not been who Adrian Martinez is either. Like, he found a whole different level tonight than anything that we've seen from him in the past.
And that's troubling. And that's troubling. Let's not leave tonight with I see the comment section. Hey, Joe C., Satterfield, whoever is over there. I see your comments coming in live. Yes, that is troubling for Oklahoma. Agreed, John? I mean, that is a problematic thing for the Sooners, that it played out the way that it did with somebody that's, quite frankly, not been good this season so far, or, John, dating back to Nebraska. This guy has not been good. Tonight against OU, he looked great, and that is very problematic. And look, OU's done some very, very great things so far this season before they dropped to 3-1. But I'm not going to sit here and kiss everybody's ass and tell you that Oklahoma's in a good spot. They're not. Tonight was troubling.
No, and I agree. And I'm probably one of the most optimistic people that you'll meet in sports media, sometimes to a fault. And yes, it was troubling. They've got a lot that they're going to have to fix and correct. They're going to have a lot that they have to work on. Defensively in particular, I don't really have much time to spend on that, which was my big issue. Yeah, the defense, they're going to have to work. And we know that there's a work in progress. Progress that no, been telling them along the way, like, not there yet. Like, we're not where we need to be. That show tonight. I mean, we didn't see. What were you saying?
Are you there?
I'm here.
You sound like a robot. It's it's like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on steroids, baby. Are you back with us? It might be me. All right. I don't know. It might be my internet connection. Internet connection looks good. I understand experience, but fresh legs matter. That's from Bo. Yeah. I hear that. Oh, shoot. I forgot about Oklahoma State. Maybe we have 7 whips. Come on, Joe C. Don't be so negative. Stop it. Yeah, the scary thing is Kansas, West Virginia Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas all have quarterbacks who can do what Martinez did to us. Yeah, well, that's not incorrect. Our offense scares me more than the defense. You know, Jimmy, I disagree. I know that the offense wasn't great tonight and obviously left a lot of meat on the bone. But I guess I guess I just look at it as Kansas State defensively is solid. Like they're going to get some stops. The vice versa, the fact that Oklahoma couldn't stop Kansas State's offense nearly as much as we thought that they would, that's what alarms me. And especially through the air. I mean, the idea that Oklahoma couldn't get back there to Adrian Martinez and he's just able to sit back there and dissect and, carve Oklahoma up, I find that very, very problematic. And in OU, when they needed a couple of stops, they couldn't get them. Mike B. Oh, no. We got USC love. USC love. Oh, man. Mike B., all I can say is get ready. Get ready, buddy. Your L is coming your way, my friend. So Tulane is better than us. Jimmy, no. Please, don't go that route, okay? It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. John, you're back with us, man.
Yeah, that's sad days that USC won in a game that was a dogfight with the Beavers. But yeah, I mean, here we are, midnight on Saturday, and now it's Sunday, and talking about a disappointing loss to the Oklahoma Sooners. And we'll have all week to break this down, and we appreciate everybody that came by and checked out the live stream. This is our first time to do this on the show, so thanks so much for popping in and for providing your comments, your thoughts, your takes, your takeaways from the game. And I'm going to say this. I think they bounce back next week against TCU. This is my early opinion of the game. I think Max Duggan does cause some problems. Quentin Johnston does, but I think they will get the win heading into the Red River Showdown. It's going to be an interesting week. I think for those of us who cover the Oklahoma Sooners in the media world, there will be a lot of I think relaxing that will be shared from some places and some overreaction from other places as well. And we'll just have to find a happy medium where we can, adequately critique this team and also understand that there's still time in this season to turn some things around.
Well, and how good is Oklahoma? Mike B., Mr. USC, congratulations. We're going to find out how good you are too. But that being said, for Oklahoma, obviously this is a bad sign for the Sooners, and yet it's not the first time Oklahoma's failed early. Now, granted, this is the Big 12 opener here, and let's see what happens after that. But it's not the first time that Oklahoma has stumbled early. Whether it's the first game in the Big 12 schedule or game 2 or game 3, and then rebounded to go win the thing. So. And the way the Big 12 schedule is set up, John, you can lose twice and still get into the thing based on, who you beat. Obviously, OU's done themselves no favors by losing to Kansas State early at home. And so they're going to have to get a hell of a lot better, and they're going to have to get a hell of a lot better, a heck of a lot quicker than we thought. They're going to have to get a heck of a lot better. So we'll see what happens next week. I think they're going to win at TCU. I agree with you. I still think Oklahoma's better than Texas. But obviously, that remains to be seen. So they've done themselves no favors, and it's the first time, John. This is what we're going to be talking about, and I know I'm long-winded here, but this is closing remarks. The final thing we're going to be talking about this week is what does Oklahoma look like in the first loss of the Brent Venables era, right? And really, that's the question this week. I was thinking it as this game expanded, what was Oklahoma going to look like the first time legitimately trailing, not down by 3, not down by an early score, down by a couple of touchdowns in this game at home in the Brent Venables era. And obviously the final return is they lost the football game. They couldn't quite get back over the hump. And so now I think, John, that's the biggest question this week is, does Oklahoma respond, right? I mean, a lot of people are hoping that this is OU crumbles in upon itself like the house of cards, right? There's a lot of people that think that could happen with Brent Venables in Oklahoma, and I don't have the ability to tell you that no, it doesn't. We're going to find out this week and beyond.
Yeah, and that's going to do it for today's live stream of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed to the show here on YouTube. If you're here on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts as well. We're going to be breaking this down some more as the week goes on. We're free and available. We're going to be daily. So if this is your first time listening to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're a long-time listener, thanks for stopping by as well, or viewer, I should say. I'm still getting used to the whole listener-viewer thing here on YouTube. So thanks again for all the comments, all the questions, all the takes, all the thoughts, all the takeaways, except for you, Mike B. No, just kidding. We appreciate you coming by to let us know that Lincoln Riley had several NFL teams that wanted him. We forgot about that part.
Thanks for the therapy session to all of you, by the way.
Yes, this was cathartic. I can go to sleep more peacefully tonight. So we appreciate you all allowing us to enjoy venting with one another about what was a very disappointing loss at the hands of the Kansas State Wildcats yet again, 41-34. So we'll talk to you more as the week goes on. Again, thank you so much.